With new products coming on the market all the time, we can often feel pressure to keep up to speed and make sure we have the latest thing. I certainly feel it with my phone, making sure I've got the latest iPhone. New cameras come out and I really want to have the new, more megapixels than ever before. With music playing or with handheld gaming, lots of things like that are things where we can often feel like the thing that we bought last year is out of date. In this video, I want to explore how maybe some retro tech that we've kind of forgotten from the past might actually be better than the current technology that's on the market today for different reasons. In this video, I'm going to go through 4 categories. I'm going to go through watches, portable music players, handheld gaming, and photography. And I'm going to be doing that all with technology from the 80s and 90s to see how does it stand up today, and are we missing some things with the modern technology that we have. So let's get started. How's it going, folks? My name is Marcus. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here on this channel, I like to talk about technology, EDC, and anything that can help me live a happier, balanced, more productive life. This video is definitely not going to have any sponsor in it, because who wants to sponsor retro technology when there's all this new modern stuff out today? So do me a favor and like and subscribe to the video to help the algorithm find me, to help make sure this video does well. Getting stuck into category 1, I want to talk about music first. So now that Spotify is the way that everybody listens to their music, that everybody streams, there's lots of benefits to that. It's on your phone, you don't have to think about it. And you can listen to somebody's top songs. If you just hear of an artist, who's Hosier? He's an Irish artist who's #1 in the charts right now, massive pride. But if you haven't heard of Hosier, and you might go on there and go on Spotify and listen to maybe his 3 songs, the top 3 songs, but you don't get a sense of who he is as an artist. You don't listen to the whole album, and you don't really immerse yourself in that whole album. So one of the things that we used to do, and I'm a kid of the 80s, I was born in 1981, so I'm technically a millennial. I'm right at the cusp of millennial. I think they call us Zennials because we kind of bridge the gap between, kind of old school technology and also the iPhone and iPads being invented within us being in our 20s. But I do remember a time when cassettes were the way I used to listen to music. And the first way I used to listen to music was using a Walkman. So this is the classic Sony Walkman that came out it came out in the 80s. The one I had was a late 80s, early 90s version. I've got it in hot pink here. And the really great thing about these was you were forced to listen to an entire album. So first of all, it was a clunky device you brought with you. If you were super lucky, you had one of the ones that had a clip that you could clip onto your belt, or they came in little leather pouches as well. But it was really something that you thought about carrying with you. It wasn't like your phone today. You really made an effort to bring your music with you. And you listened to it on headphones like this. These are retro headphones that you can still get for Walkman today. So I was interested to check this out and see, is this still as good as I remember it was? Or if really we moved on and audio just isn't the way it used to be. So let's go through what this is like. So first of all, when you open it up, you've got to put in AA batteries. So it's not a case of just plugging it in to charge it. You've got to be really thoughtful about making sure you got batteries with you. There's something kind of magic about that it's so easy to just change out batteries on something like this and listen to your music as you go. So popping the batteries in, you plug your headphones in, and then the important thing is you have to decide which music you're going to listen to. So I've got here, this is actually a cassette. This was the first cassette I ever bought, which is Rage Against the Machine. I was listening to it in the back of the car while Mum and Dad were driving around, and I was being very good, but in my head I was really bad. So listening to Rage Against the Machine, they had no idea what that was, other than it was something I was listening to in the back of the car and having a little minor rebellion on my own in my head. But you stick it in, and there's something incredible about it. You hit play, and the wheels turn, and there's this hum that happens. So the music that you get today, I'm going to turn it off so that I can have myself think. The music you get today when you stream it, it's not high definition music, but it is high quality music. It is slightly compressed because you're streaming it, but it is really great music. But there's no atmosphere to it. There's no sense of kind of, listening to the album as an activity. You're putting music on in the background as you do something else. It's not like the thing you're doing. Whereas when you do it with a Walkman, you really are immersed in it. Like, that's the thing. You're not going to be taking calls with it. Maybe you're walking somewhere, maybe you're doing it on your commute, but it's the activity you're doing. I really like that. And the sense of atmosphere you get from these devices as well is just unparalleled. Now the music quality is different, but it's kind of like vinyl. Listening to something on vinyl, it's very rich. You get that background hum. It's not as good as streaming that song, and somehow it's also better at the same time as well. That's what you get from a Sony Walkman. So artists, when they created their music, and they still do today, they intend for you to listen to the entire album. So if you just go onto Spotify and listen to their top most played songs, you're not going to get a sense for who they are as a true artist, because you're just getting their smashing hits, just their best sellers. So for example, if you're listening to Hosier, you might just get his top songs, but you're not going to get his whole album and how he curated that album. When you listen on a Walkman, you listen to the album the whole way through. Well, you actually listen to half a side. Some cassettes you have to take them out and turn them over. This one actually does reverse play because it's fancy. But you listen to the whole album. Maybe you've only got one cassette with you and you listen to that album a couple of times. And there's massive value in that. It's really immersive and there's just something special about it. And as I've been using this and bringing it with me, I've really appreciated that. The second benefit of bringing your music like this is that today when you stream music on Spotify, you can't guarantee that it will always be there. There's always licensing disputes, people who take their music off Spotify, and you might not just be able to get that album. Maybe it's a specific album that you can only get on cassette or CD, or something from the past that is really hard to get, it's just not on Spotify. And that's something that as we subscribe to music today, as we subscribe to anything, as we subscribe to Netflix or Apple TV, things like that, we've actually lost control of the media that we own, and we don't own our own digital media anymore. We subscribe to it. And I'm a big fan of owning the media that you want to have access to. So an example of not owning the media that you're streaming to is, a good one is like the Star Wars. The Star Wars that I watched in the 80s and fell in love with, A New Hope episode 4 that came out, I actually can't watch that there's no version of it that exists. Because George Lucas continued to edit it, continued to change the CGI, in fact added characters later on in the video, and it's actually a different film than it was when I watched it. And that continues to happen. Another one is like Westworld. Westworld, the TV show about robots, cowboy robots that came out. Netflix felt like they couldn't make money from streaming it anymore because the residuals they had to pay to the actors, and as a result they don't stream it. You actually can't get Westworld anywhere. Now, it's not amazing, but I was annoyed by that and I actually ended up buying that on DVD. And I've been slowly building up a collection of DVDs and Blu-ray and HD Blu-rays of things that I want to be able to watch forever, because I don't want to be able to have to rely on streaming services and residuals paying actors for me to be able to watch the films that I love. So I think there's a second part to it, which is own the music and own the content that you really love, and this is a good way of doing it. And the third aspect to this that I really love is that I've been trying to use my phone less and less. And the reasons I tell myself I can't leave my phone at home are, 1, I need to have a great camera, and 2 is I like to be able to listen to music, audiobooks, etc. So by bringing this with me, I was able to check off one more reason as to why I don't need to have my phone with me all the time. And I just think there's something magic. If you haven't tried it, even buy a Discman, a CD player, and carry a CD with you if you want. I used to have mini discs as well. Whatever your preferred format is, there's something magic about cassettes for me because that's what I listened to as a kid. But pick your format, go on eBay, buy one of them, and I promise you won't be disappointed. If you are, you can just flip it, sell it on eBay for what you bought it for. The market's not going up massively or down massively, but it is a good investment and I've really enjoyed it. Moving on to the second category, and for me that's photography. The second main reason why I need to have an iPhone, I need to carry things with me. So I'm a big, I fall into the trap of having the latest cameras all the time. The camera I'm shooting on in front of you right now is an FX3 camera with the latest lenses. It's not even the first gen lens, it's the second gen. The camera I'm shooting from above is an A7S Mark III. Again, Sony, expensive cameras that I really love. And just recently I felt like it wasn't enough and I bought an A7C Mark II. This is absolutely incredible. I love this. It's a point and shoot / video camera. It's probably the best camera I have ever owned. However, do you need to spend the kind of money I have to spend on these in order to have a great time and create great photos? And the answer is no. So what I've got here is an Olympus OM2. This is a camera from the 1970s. It's a 35mm film camera, and shooting with this is an event as well. So similar to using the Walkman, you've got to want to go and take photos with this. This is not the kind of thing that you just want to snap a menu in a restaurant, or the way oftentimes I'll use my phone, for example, if I get like my car insurance comes in and I just want to document it, but I don't want to go to the effort of scanning it. I'll take a photo and I'll just know it's in my photos if I need it. This is not the camera for this. But it is a small enough camera that you can just stick it over your shoulder and forget about it. It just sits under my arm, slightly around my back there, and I do bring it with me. And when I bring it, I use it. And I find myself taking really nice photos of the kids if we're at the beach, if I see a nice car, or if there's a nice building, or even if there's just some nice sunlight coming through, I'll try and do some really tasteful photos. And I know they're not going on Instagram. They're not something that I'm doing for kind of external recognition. They're not for anything else except for the fact that I'll develop these photos and they'll remind me of the time we had that day. Even if I only look at the developed photos one time or go through them with my kids or my wife, they're just kind of magic. There's something special about it. Now these cameras, these can be bought. You can get these on eBay. They're fantastic. And it really teaches you how cameras work. So instead of just putting things on auto with the latest technology, you do need to know, you need to have a better understanding about how far you are from the subject, about what does aperture mean, what does shutter speed mean. You have to decide what film you put in advance. When I shot this video, I've set ISO to 400 because of the lighting that was in the room at the time. But when you buy film, you buy the ISO of the film knowing how you're going to shoot it. Are you going to buy ISO 200? Something like that would be typical. And the rigmarole around that and the kind of pageantry and the fact that you only have 32 photos, you're not just going to do 15 photos of the same thing. You're going to do you're going to frame a photo, take one, maybe two photos with it, and that's it. You either got it or you didn't, and you don't find out till you develop it. For me, I develop them kind of in batch, like every 3 or 4 months. So I get this big surprise because I've forgotten the photos I've taken. And having this camera for me has been a lot of fun. And you'll see it in a lot of the thumbnails I put on this channel because I use it for that. It's just a fun camera, 35mm. And if you haven't tried it, if you're just a digital person and you've not gone back and tried taking photos and the kind of quality of image you get from these old cameras, definitely worth a shout. Not crazy expensive. Pick your brand. I like this Olympus OM2, but I inherited it. It was given to me. I didn't buy it, but it is a classic and I really like it. Moving on, the third category is handheld gaming. So I actually don't have my old Game Boy anymore. I've got this Game Boy Advance, but it takes the old cartridges, the original cartridges that I used to use, Tetris and Super Mario Land. Super Mario Land was the first game I ever had on the Game Boy, and I loved the Game Boy when it came out. Actually, I remember we had to save up, me and my sister had to sell all of our old toys, and we had like a swing set, like a kind of a small toy house in the back garden. We had a big garage sale. We sold everything and we managed to get 100 punts together, which is what a Game Boy cost. We went out and we bought it. We went to the UK for Christmas to see some friends. They were cheaper there and we bought a Game Boy. And I spent hours of my life playing that Game Boy. I remember finishing, when I was really young, I remember finishing Super Mario Land for the first time and it was epic. It wasn't the first handheld console that I had. The first handheld console I had was actually a Zelda game. It was not this exact format. It was one that opened clamshell. And I went online because I was feeling really nostalgic, and for this video I was going to buy one. And the cheapest you can get that exact one now for is like $400 or $500 for one of those. If only I'd kept it. But I remember that was my first one. I remember playing that till I beat the game. I don't know where it ended up. I'm sure it ended up in the equivalent of a Goodwill box in Ireland. So somebody has that now. Somebody's making money from it. But it was fantastic. This is one area where playing this Nintendo is great on these old screens, and I really do like it, but I do think there's a downside to this. You can't save your games as you go, so if you are using it for commuting and you've only got a 20-minute or 40-minute commute and you're like halfway through a 3-hour game, you're not going to be able to pause it. You have to turn it off, you lose your spot, so you find yourself starting the games over and over and over again. So for this one, I would recommend you get an emulator, and there's plenty of retro emulators you can get. This is the Mu 2, which has all of the Game Boy games, the Game Boy Advance games, lots of even, it's got, PlayStation, Super Nintendo, a bunch of games actually come on this, and they're super cheap. They're like $60 today. It has the original Game Boy form factor, which I really like, so it has that kind of beige off-white color, which there's some nostalgia to that. It's got some of the same buttons, but it's got more buttons too, like the R1 and R2, L1, L2 buttons for playing more modern games. So this, and the screen on it's fantastic. So it's immersive, so you can play the old kind of 8-bit games on it if you want to, but you can play more modern games too. So this is one area where actually the nostalgia doesn't pan out. I have enjoyed doing it, but I actually get as much joy from a modern console like this, or this other console, this the Legend of Zelda console, which I have, which actually has 4 versions of Zelda on it. I'll just show you real quick. Like, you can go back to the real old games, where the graphics are just really naff. But you go back and forth on it, so you have to go back and you have to listen to that. and I'm dead already. But these games are great and I really enjoy it, but I can power it off, I can save the game. All of those things are important to me, and it charges with USB-C. Both of these charge with USB-C, so they're modern consoles, lithium-ion batteries, and they're just handy. They're smaller, you can stick them in a bag. So this is one area where they are better. You're still playing the retro games, but you've got the modern consoles, and I think that's probably somewhere where I would make the change. And then number 4 is anything to do with timepieces. So there's a lot of debate around whether you should have digital watches and how much more accurate they are. You can have a Casio today, which will tell you that second, it's, you know, an atomic clock. It will, for your entire life, it will never lose a second of its time. In fact, the batteries in them last so long. I've had one that lasted 12 or 15 years. They're really, really great. And they serve a purpose. There's nothing wrong with a Casio watch. There's nothing wrong with a digital watch. I used to have a lot of them. Calculator watches, TV remote watches. I had a watch that turned into a transformer. You could clip it off and shape it into a transformer. But I'm of the age where I think that having a classic watch, you just can't beat it. I'm currently wearing my Rolex Submariner, which I bought in 2010, so it's not a retro watch, but I do think that investing in, you know, if you did buy a watch from the 80s or 90s, getting an old Omega, Rolex, Seiko, something like that, is really money well spent. It doesn't keep time in the same way that digital watches do, and that's kind of fantastic. You have to wind it. Some of them you have to wind them to keep them going. Some of them, they're automatic and they work by the movement of your wrist, but it's something you have to take care of. And overall, across these 4 categories, the things that you have to take care of, that you have to put thought into, that you're bringing with you, and that you're actually using the device is like the activity in itself. It's not like a side device, like with your phone using the camera or listening to Spotify. Those are side activities you do to just kind of kill time while you're doing something else. These are the activity. You bring these with you because they're the primary thing you're going to be doing with you when you do it. So I've really enjoyed carrying all this retro tech with me for the last number of weeks. And if you're thinking about scratching those itches, go onto eBay. They're very affordable and it's been a lot of fun. So what are some of the things that are kind of retro that you bring with you? What are some of the things that maybe have been passed down in your family or as an heirloom, or something that you've had for years that you would never give up? I'd love to hear about it. Or worse, what are the things that you used to own that you wish you owned now, that you got rid of, it went into a Goodwill? I've got a bunch of those, but as I've upgraded over time, I've got rid of things, and as I look back now, I regret them. So what are those things for you? I'd love to hear about it. Stick it in the comments below. Good luck.